You're so useless. I can't believe I'm stuck with an ugly wife like you. I wish I could get a divorce tomorrow. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Drunk or not, how could anyone say something so cruel? I felt myself shaking with anger. You're too drunk. Apologize to Sharon. That's right. You can't just throw around the word divorce like it's nothing. My in-laws tried to rein Andrew in, but he wasn't having any of it. Instead, he doubled down, almost as if their concern just spurred him to insult me more. Yeah, whatever. She's the one who'll be struggling after a divorce, not me. I'm the one who wants out. The way he spoke, it was beyond cruel. I felt something inside me snap. I put on my brightest smile, looked right at Andrew, and said, "Oh, perfect. Let's get divorced then." Andrew seemed to shrink back, stunned by my sudden comeback. But this wasn't something I could let slide anymore. As our family started murmuring around us, I spoke again, ready to shatter Andrew's pride. My name is Sharon. I'm a 30-year-old mom. Our son, Mark, is 3 years old and goes to daycare. He's going through what they call the terrible threes, which can be challenging, but he's still so lovable. My husband, Andrew, who is Mark's dad, is 5 years older than me. He's 35. Right now, he works at a big corporate firm, and we live happily as a family of 3 in a small apartment. But getting here wasn't all smooth sailing. There were plenty of times when I regretted marrying Andrew. 5 years ago, Andrew and I started dating. We were together for 2 years before I got pregnant, and that's when we got married. We had already promised to marry each other, though it was just a verbal promise, and both our parents got along well. So there was no real issue with the pregnancy. But the trouble started after we were married. I was on maternity leave, home alone, when it all went down. The doorbell rang, and when I answered, there was a woman standing there. Her eyes were red, like she'd been crying for hours. I was taken aback. "Are you okay? What happened?" I asked. But she just glared at me and yelled, "Give me back Drew." Excuse me. I don't get it. What's going on?" If anyone didn't get it, it was me. Some stranger shows up at my door, yelling and sobbing. "Drew." I repeated her words. And then it hit me. "Do you mean Andrew? My husband, Andrew?" "Yes. Who else would I be talking about? What's your relationship with Andrew? And, who are you exactly?" I asked her carefully, feeling a pit in my stomach. The woman let out a sharp huff, wiped her tears, and with an air of superiority, she answered, "I'm Rachel. I'm Drew's girlfriend. We were about to celebrate our 1-year anniversary, but then you got pregnant, and he suddenly broke up with me." I was speechless. Rachel, as she introduced herself, broke down again, crying even harder. The shock I felt was overwhelming, but I could also feel her pain. It hurt me, too. Eventually, Rachel left, tears streaming down her face. She didn't try to harm me or anything. She just wanted to tell me the truth. She must have known that telling me wouldn't change anything. Yet there she was, helpless, just like me. Still, the fact that Andrew had deceived me for a whole year, how could I believe that, given how he normally acted? I hoped it was some kind of mistake. But that night, when I confronted him, Andrew confessed. "I'm really sorry." She confessed her feelings to me, and I turned her down. But then she started crying. I felt so bad for her, so I kept meeting with her. Just met up with her. But she called herself your girlfriend. Well, yay, I won't deny it. It was that kind of relationship. Hearing those words come directly from Andrew felt like a punch to the gut. Seeing my face fall, Andrew scrambled. "But you're the one I love. You're the real deal, Sharon. And now we have a kid, we're married. It's all over with her, I promise." "That's not the point." I broke down and cried. Andrew looked genuinely shocked by how upset I was, and all he could do was apologize over and over. Even though I knew it was over, I couldn't shake the worry that maybe he was still deceiving me, or the doubt about whether I could ever truly stay with him after this. "I'm really sorry. From now on, I swear I'll never make you feel like this again. I'll be there for you and our baby. I promise." Hearing him repeat that over and over, I finally calmed down. After all, we were just newly married, and I was carrying our baby. If I told my parents I wanted a divorce over something in the past, I'd only make them worry. Plus, deep down, I still had feelings for Andrew. I didn't really want a divorce. "Fine, but you can't betray me again. There's no next time." Of course. Andrew's voice was strong and determined. I decided to believe in that serious look in his eyes, just one more time, and sealed this incident away in my heart. A little while later, our beautiful baby boy was born. We named him Mark. The doctors said he was one of the healthiest babies they'd ever seen, and I was learning the ropes of being a mom. Overwhelmed, but happy. But when Mark was about 2 months old, Andrew came home looking angry and irritable. "What's wrong?" "I quit my job." "What? You quit?" "Yeah, I got into a fight with my boss." Andrew wouldn't even look at me. I pressed him for more. Over something like that. "Mark was just born. What were you thinking?" "So what? Tomorrow, you're going to be unemployed. What are we going to do? How many times are you going to quit your jobs?" I was so consumed with anxiety that I couldn't even try to understand how Andrew was feeling. I just yelled. We didn't have much in savings. And actually, this wasn't the first time Andrew had left a job. The first time was before we started dating. He had gotten a job at a mid-sized but reputable company in town. But he said he had to leave because his boss kept harassing him. When we met, he had just switched to another job. The second time was while we were dating. He took a part-time job at a supermarket, but said it didn't suit him, so he changed jobs again. The third time was after we got married. He wanted more flexibility in his shifts, so he took a full-time position as an office clerk at a care facility. But he quit that one, too. I didn't think job hopping was necessarily a bad thing. People fit or don't fit with certain jobs. Andrew was proof of that. Still, quitting jobs this easily. It just had to be Andrew's fault. Andrew, however, did not like the way I put it, and turned his anger toward me. "Whether I quit or change jobs 1,000 times, it's none of your business. It's my life." "That may be true, but you've got a child to support now. You're an adult, a parent. Quitting over an argument with your boss. So what? I'm supposed to sacrifice my life for Mark? If that's how you feel, why don't you just raise Mark on your own?" That comment hit a nerve. It's not like that's what I meant at all. But clearly, Andrew couldn't see my point of view. Both of us fell silent. That was the start of our Cold War. A month passed, and our conversations were kept to a bare minimum. Andrew seemed to be out looking for a job every day, but nothing was panning out. I knew we couldn't survive like this much longer, so I started looking for a daycare center for Mark, who was barely 4 months old. Thankfully, I was able to find one quickly, and I contacted my company to discuss coming back to work. After explaining my situation, they graciously offered, "Would you like to try working remotely?" My direct supervisor was a man, but he had 2 kids of his own. "Are you sure it's okay?" "Yay, your child is still young, and it must be tough. And if you're feeling unwell, working remotely means you can still manage, maybe even step out to take him to the doctor if needed. It's a way to keep your job without overdoing it, and it's not a disadvantage to the company either." I was deeply moved and grateful that they let me work remotely. He made it sound so easy, but there had never been a precedent for this. He must have gone to bat for me with upper management, and they said my pay wouldn't be much different from before. It would be challenging, of course, but it was a huge advantage for me. On top of that, I was genuinely touched by my boss's kindness, and it made me determined to push through no matter how hard it got. Truthfully, I still wanted to spend more time with Mark, but sometimes sacrifices have to be made. To keep our lives going, I had no choice but to work. So when Mark was 4.5 months old, he started going to daycare. I felt a pang in my chest seeing him, the tiniest one there. But since Mark hadn't started showing any signs of separation anxiety, he went to daycare without crying. During that time, Andrew still couldn't find a job. He probably went to the job center every morning and spent his days there. He'd return in the evening, but even if I was still working, he wouldn't help with the housework. The Cold War continued, and we barely spoke to each other. But about a month after I returned to work, light finally started to return to our household. I got a job. For the first time in a while, Andrew excitedly shared the news. Honestly, it didn't matter where. I just wanted him to take his work seriously. Contrary to my modest expectations, Andrew was thrilled about his new job. It was at a big-name company. That's amazing. I was genuinely surprised. Seeing my reaction, Andrew looked smugly satisfied. In any case, be sure to put up with the little things this time. Don't quit over something small. Of course not. Besides, it's a major company. It won't be like before, with unreasonable bosses and unfair treatment. I knew working at a large company didn't necessarily mean things would be fair, but hitting him with that kind of logic wouldn't help. It would only crush his motivation. So I smiled and celebrated Andrew's fresh start. 2 years passed. Mark turned 2, and he was becoming quite the talker. I was still working remotely. Contrary to my earlier worries, Andrew didn't quit this time. He worked hard. By now, he seemed comfortable in his role, but he was very busy. Even when Mark would try to talk to him, calling, "Dad, Dad," Andrew would say, "I've got work messages," or "Dad's busy," never putting his smartphone down. I wished he'd at least look at Mark's face, talk to him, or play a bit, but I wanted Andrew to focus on work first, so I said nothing and just watched over him. Then Christmas came around. Every year since our marriage, we spent Christmas at my in-laws' house. Andrew is an only child, but his father William is the oldest of 3 siblings, so Andrew's Uncle Eric, Aunt Mary, and their cousins all gather for the party. It's something William looks forward to every year. This year was no different, and the party kicked off. Andrew, who now worked at a major company, was immediately cornered by Mary's son, Kevin, who was about to start his job hunt. He asked Andrew for advice. Well, in my case, I had the accomplishments from my previous job to fall back on. Andrew said this proudly, but all he'd accomplished was quitting after a fight. Listening closely, I realized that he'd told our family and relatives that his past job changes were because he'd been headhunted by other companies. I couldn't help but feel a bit exasperated. But unlike me, everyone else praised him, and Andrew just kept going. "Mark is adorable. My job's going great. It's really been worth all the hard work. Andrew, you're really something. Yay, now if only my wife were a bit prettier, things would be perfect." He wasn't speaking directly to me, but those words made me freeze. "What? Come on, aren't you just head over heels for Sharon?" Kevin tried to play off Andrew's comment as a joke, trying to defuse the situation, but Andrew just laughed it off, as if, "She's a useless, ugly woman. I wish I could get a divorce already." I couldn't believe it. Even if he was drunk, how could those words come out of his mouth? My whole body shook with anger. "Hey, ugly, don't just stand there. Bring me another drink. This one's empty." Realizing I'd heard the conversation, Andrew decided to taunt me further. "You're way too drunk. Apologize to Sharon." Yay, you shouldn't just throw around talk about divorce like it's nothing. My in-laws tried to get through to Andrew, but he wasn't listening. Instead, as if to spite them, he kept belittling me even more. "Doesn't matter. She's the one who'll have a problem if we divorce. I want out." That was it. My anger finally exploded. I gave a big smile. "Well then, let's get a divorce." My voice came out louder than I expected, and suddenly, the entire room froze. "What?" Andrew, shocked by my unexpected words, faltered, then tried to laugh it off. "Haha, come on, it's a joke. You don't have to take it so seriously." "A joke? If you joke like that, I can't stay with you." But Andrew, who had been belittling me this whole time, shrank back in the face of my sudden comeback. But this wasn't something I could let slide as a joke anymore. As the family began to whisper among themselves, I spoke up again. By the way, I've been listening to you giving advice to Kevin, acting like you're some big shot. Who do you think you are? What? Kevin tilted his head, confused. The advice Andrew was giving, instead of being genuinely helpful, was just him boasting, with no real regard for Kevin's situation. I mean, you're just a temp worker making a net income of $1, $3K, and you're talking like you're a full-time employee. What? A temp worker? When I said this, Kevin loudly repeated my words. A temp, net income of $1, $3K. Eric and Mary immediately started pressing Andrew for answers. Andrew's face turned bright red as he glared at me, but I acted like I didn't notice. Then William spoke up. What is this about? Are you really working as a temp, making a net income of $1, $3K? Well, Andrew straightened up, the tone of William's voice obviously unsettling him. William was kind to me but was essentially a strict and serious man. Someone quite the opposite of Andrew. Andrew had once told me that if William ever got angry, he was impossible to handle. Clearly, Andrew was terrified. I never checked if you were a full-time employee. But didn't you say you were recruited to work at your current company? William's questioning, with that stern tone, continued. Andrew remained silent, and Eric chimed in. Andrew, is what Sharon said true? Well, you see, Sharon, what's going on? Unable to hold back any longer, Jasmine turned to me. Now everyone in the room was looking at me. Andrew, who had gone from bright red to a pale blue, shook his head desperately. Don't say anything, keep quiet. He was practically mouthing the words, but Andrew had already crossed a line he shouldn't have. Ignoring his pleading eyes, I continued. It's just as I said. Sure, Andrew works at that company, but he's only there as a temp. He just happened to find the position through a staffing agency. But what about the headhunting? Headhunting? Of course not. He left his previous job after fighting with his boss, and then just signed up with a temp agency. The truth left everyone in stunned silence. Only Jasmine, her voice shaking, asked me another question. Wait, so were all the job changes like that? Yes. He would leave jobs over not getting along with the company, or because of supposed harassment. Seems like he has no perseverance, and quits easily. Was it a lie then, that you were headhunted? William's face was now bright red as he turned to Andrew, shouting. Andrew cowered, unable to respond. No, he couldn't respond. He had been deceiving his parents all along, and now both of them were being humiliated in front of the entire family. And because of that, his salary has not gone up. Just as I said, it's currently a net income of $1, $3K. $1, $3K. Come on. Kevin couldn't hold back a laugh. Mary, his mother, tried to tell him to be quiet, but even she was half laughing. But, Sharon, aren't you unemployed? How are you making ends meet? Jasmine, still pale, asked me. I was surprised by this. Me? Unemployed? Aren't you? Andrew told us that. He said it's hard having to support you both. Andrew, what is the meaning of this? It turned out Andrew had lied about me not working, just to maintain his own pride. That also explained why he'd belittled me and brought up divorce earlier. He wanted to make himself look like the breadwinner in front of the family, someone important, someone to be respected. Andrew sat there, trembling and staring down. I looked around the room, at Jasmine and everyone else, and said, I had to go back to work when Mark was only 4 months old because Andrew quit his job. I work full-time, remotely from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And Mark has been going to daycare since he was 4 months old. Wasn't that for educational purposes? Educational purposes. Daycare centers only accept kids when both parents are working. Jasmine was speechless. She had told me more than once. There's no need to send such a young child to daycare. I had always dodged the question, but now the reason was clear. Jasmine hadn't known the requirements for daycare or the fact that I was working. I see. I had no idea, and it's all because of Andrew. I'm so sorry, Sharon. As she spoke, Jasmine broke down in tears. Jasmine had always been a housewife and was a bit naive. It made sense that she wouldn't know much about daycare, and I knew she hadn't meant any harm. Seeing Jasmine cry so openly, even Andrew seemed shocked and pained. That was the final straw, and William's anger reached its peak. "You lied to your parents," burdened Sharon and Mark, and then had the nerve to speak that way to Sharon, who has been supporting you. "What on earth are you thinking?" "Dad, calm down. Don't call me Dad. I'm done with you. I'm cutting you off. I don't need someone who would make Jasmine cry. Get out." Andrew froze in his tracks at William's shouting, then quickly shrank back and stood up. He walked over to me as if to make an escape, and muttered, "Let's go." To be honest, I didn't want to go home with Andrew, but there was no reason for me to stay there either. I picked up Mark and stood, giving a quick bow. A house that had been so lively during the party was now completely silent, except for the sound of Jasmine quietly sobbing. I left that quiet in-laws house behind. I drove us back home. Andrew sat in the passenger seat, sulking the whole way. After arriving home, I put a sleeping Mark to bed, then returned to the living room, where Andrew was waiting for me, ready to speak. "Why did you have to ruin everything by saying that?" I ignored him, which seemed to make him even angrier, his voice rising. "Hey, are you listening to me? Can't you take a joke? What, is your brain as ugly as your face?" I glared at Andrew, but getting into a fight now would make all the effort I'd put in so far go to waste. I took a deep breath and pulled out something I'd been holding onto. "Here." I placed an envelope on the coffee table in front of the sofa where Andrew was sitting. "Is that divorce papers?" "I told you, it was just a joke." Andrew looked bewildered for a second. "Just open it." Andrew reluctantly reached for the envelope as I told him to. I watched him slowly pull out its contents and examine them. The moment he saw the paper inside, his face went rigid, and I didn't miss that reaction. "What the hell is this?" "It's the summary of your infidelity investigation. You seem to know exactly why I'd have something like this, don't you?" "I know." I kept my tone authoritative, and Andrew's voice faltered. The paper in Andrew's hand contained the overview of an investigation into his cheating, which I had hired a private investigator to conduct. I understood that his work kept him busy, but even so, Andrew spent an unusually long time on his smartphone. I had a suspicion that he was cheating on me. However, I had my own job to take care of, so I couldn't keep track of Andrew's behavior. That's why I hired a private investigator. The actual results are in here. Want to take a look? The paper Andrew held was just the contract summary. I pulled out another envelope and held it in front of Andrew. Of course, I already knew what was inside, but Andrew didn't know what details or photos were in the report. Still, his expression and body language made it obvious that he was aware of and acknowledged the results without even seeing them. "What's that supposed to mean? Me cheating? That's ridiculous." His words sounded confident, but there was no way to lie his way out of this. I already had the evidence in my hands. I'd received the report a while back. It was infuriating, but I was too busy with work and preparing for the Christmas gathering. I planned to wait until the new year to calmly discuss things, so I held it all in. But after Andrew belittled me, humiliated me, and only cared about himself, I reached my breaking point. Divorcing him was already a decision I'd made in my heart. So when he brought up divorce today, I just went along with it. "I don't know why you're trying to spin this, but we're getting a divorce." "Hey, come on, let's be reasonable." "Oh, I am being reasonable. I've been thinking calmly about this for weeks now. You think about it too. Why would anyone want to stay married to a husband who cheats and belittles the wife who supports him in front of their whole family?" Andrew fell silent, then started to sniffle. Was he trying to cry to get sympathy? If anything, it only made me feel more disgusted. "Oh, and by the way, I already got those divorce papers you said you wanted earlier. I'm sorry. It's all my fault." "Yay, it is. If you know that, Then hurry up and sign them. I shoved the divorce papers into Andrew's hands. I had even prepared a pen for him, yet he made no move to take it. After waiting a bit, and seeing that Andrew was just crying and begging for my forgiveness, I decided to force him to make up his mind by showing him the results of the cheating investigation. "You don't have to show me. I know I'm wrong." But Andrew refused to look. "Just look at it," I yelled at Andrew, forcing him to face the evidence. As he read through the report, his face turned pale. He was so shocked that his tears stopped. What is this?" The words came out of him like a desperate whisper. I had figured as much, but Andrew clearly hadn't known. I wanted him to absorb the information not just through his eyes, but through his ears as well, so I spoke up again. "That woman, Rachel, right? The one you were seeing before we got married. She's pregnant, isn't she?" "She's pregnant." Just as I expected, Andrew started to tremble. One of the photos he held showed Rachel entering a maternity clinic. The private investigator I hired had one of their staff pretend to be pregnant and approach Rachel. Apparently, Rachel had readily admitted to being pregnant, and the whole exchange was documented in the report. "I told you before, there wouldn't be a next time, and I wouldn't forgive you. Yet you didn't cut ties with her, did you?" "I know. I don't want to hear excuses like before. The fact is, she's pregnant. I don't want Mark to have a half-sibling, so just disappear from our lives. Actually, Mark and I will be the ones to leave." Andrew had nothing more to say. Of course not. There was nothing he could say. After that, I contacted the investigator and got a referral for a lawyer. I filed for both damages and child support from Andrew, and for damages from Rachel. Andrew cried and apologized over and over, begging me not to leave, but I didn't listen to a word. Rachel quickly paid the damages. She probably wanted to marry Andrew as soon as possible. I was grateful she'd taken out the trash for me. Eventually, Andrew realized that divorce was his only option, so he borrowed money from his parents to pay the compensation. He said he would pay child support from his small salary going forward. As soon as I confirmed the funds had been transferred, I filed the divorce papers. I had no more attachments to Andrew since everything I needed had been settled. Andrew, on the other hand, seemed full of regrets, but that didn't matter to me. I left the house to start a new life with Mark, happy to be free. My in-laws even visited my parents, who lived far away, to personally apologize for Andrew's disgraceful behavior. I never had any negative feelings toward my in-laws. They had lent Andrew the money to pay the damages and talked to him about freeing me through divorce. If anything, I was grateful for their support. If anything ever happens with Mark, we'll always be here to help. I didn't want anything to do with Andrew anymore, but those words meant a lot to me. Mark and I started our new lives in a new home. But then, 6 months after the divorce, Andrew contacted me out of nowhere. "Sharon, I'm really sorry. I want another chance. Let's start over." Life had finally settled down, and just hearing his voice filled me with disgust. Honestly, that call was nothing but a nuisance. "I'm standing in front of your house right now. I want to see Mark's face. Just for a moment. Please let me come in." I figured he must have asked my in-laws for my new address. Though I was hesitant about Andrew's request, he had been paying child support, so I reluctantly agreed. "But I'm not letting you in the house. You can see him at the door." "That's fine." Andrew quickly accepted my terms. 3 minutes after hanging up the phone, the doorbell rang. "Who is it?" Mark asked innocently, but I couldn't bring myself to say it was his father. "Stay here, Mark. A friend of Mom's is at the door. You can wave to him from here." Okay. I didn't want Mark and Andrew to get too close, so I decided to let Mark see Andrew from behind the door leading to the living room. Then I went to the door alone. "Sharon." It had been a while since we'd seen each other, and Andrew's eyes welled up with tears as he looked at me. "Mark is over there. Take a look, and then leave." "Mark, he's gotten so big in just 6 months." Andrew whispered happily to himself. He was the one who broke everything, yet he spoke as if he were the victim. Looking at Mark's face, Andrew seemed to make up his mind about something and turned to me. Like I said before, don't you think we could start over? Don't be ridiculous. You have Rachel and your child now, remember? At my words, Andrew's expression darkened. Actually, and he started to explain. Apparently, after our divorce, he did marry Rachel, but Rachel didn't do any housework, and she wasn't holding down a stable job. She worked part-time, but she got into a fight with her coworkers and quit. Can you believe that? And now she's in her last trimester, so nobody will hire her. He spoke as if he had no part in it, not even realizing that he was just like Rachel. We don't have any money, so paying child support for Mark is tough. We can't live like this. So I thought, what if I just leave Rachel and come back to you? I could pay child support for Rachel's baby instead, and we'd all be happier. I was dumbfounded. He probably thought that if we lived off my salary, he could use his income to support Rachel's child. How could he think that such a proposal would make anyone happy? Besides, Rachel had always liked Andrew. I don't know how they got back together, but she was clearly obsessed with him. No matter how poor they were, I doubted Rachel would want to let go of Andrew. And why should I support Andrew while he pays child support for someone else's child? I hated Andrew, so there was no way we could be happy together. See, even Mark has been looking at me this whole time. Andrew said this joyfully, watching Mark glance over at us from the living room. Sorry, but both Mark and I would be miserable if we were with you. I'm not interested in getting back together. But think about Mark. He needs a father in his life. Andrew spoke with intensity, then called out toward the living room. Hey, Mark, come here. Mark, responding to the voice, opened the door. Mark, seeing him smile, pained me a bit. This was Andrew's fault, but because of him, our child lost his father. Mark, still smiling, asked me innocently, Mom, who's that man? What? I was stunned by the question. What? Andrew, at the same moment, echoed my surprise. Who are you? But Mark, with his pure smile, asked Andrew again. I couldn't help but laugh. In the 6 months they hadn't seen each other, Andrew's presence had vanished from Mark's mind. But I knew it wasn't just about time. Even when he was still around, Andrew never truly connected with Mark. He ignored Mark when he'd try to talk in his broken, simple sentences, always glued to his smartphone. It was no wonder Mark didn't recognize his face. It looks like Mark doesn't need you. No way. Mark. It's Dad. Dad. I don't have a dad. I only need Mom. Andrew staggered and caught himself against the wall. I struggled to hold back my laughter. So that's that? We'll be happy on our own. Andrew probably never thought even his own child would reject him. He sighed quietly several times, holding his head in his hands. His tightly pressed lips and regretful posture spoke volumes about his remorse. Forgotten by Mark, and rejected once more by me, Andrew finally seemed to accept that there was no place for him here, and he left without a word. A month later, I got a call from Jasmine. Although we kept in touch, Jasmine and I weren't the kind of friends who would chat without a reason. So when I answered the call, wondering what it could be, Jasmine spoke in a serious tone. Sharon, I don't know how to say this, but I need some advice. Advice? What's wrong? Andrew's baby was just born, right? Well, he's type O, but the baby's blood type is AB. Andrew's not very good at science, so he doesn't seem to realize it, but that means the baby isn't biologically his, right? I held back my laughter. It seemed Jasmine had no one else to turn to, so she came to me for advice, but there was nothing I could say. And it looks like Andrew's temp job won't be renewed. I just don't know what to do. William says to just leave him. Jasmine, I really don't think you need to worry about this. Andrew is an adult. He'll figure it out. I managed to respond while suppressing my laughter. Jasmine's cluelessness allowed me to find out what was going on, and I felt a surprising sense of satisfaction. Serves him right. I never would have guessed that Rachel's child wasn't Andrew's. But then again, even his own child, Mark, had forgotten him. He chose to claim the child as his own, so no matter whose baby it really was, I hoped he would raise it well. As for me, I continued moving forward, raising Mark on my own. Work was going smoothly. My efforts with remote work were recognized, and the company decided to create a dedicated remote work group for mothers returning from maternity leave and those with caregiving responsibilities. I was appointed as the leader of this remote work group. My pay increased, and I was finally able to start saving money. We're even planning a trip with the compensation I received from Andrew and Rachel. My parents were worried about me right after the divorce, but now they're relieved to see me happy and doing well. I'm not someone who would let this kind of thing break me. With Mark by my side, I know I can handle anything. That's how I feel.
Actually, the bride can't have children, and I've always been against the marriage. But my son insisted, so I had no choice. In the middle of the wedding reception, the mother-in-law, standing on the stage to deliver her speech, blurted out something shocking. She boldly declared my infertility in front of all the attendees. Well, as you can see, the bride is a barren failure. But she's a career woman, and she earns well, so I reluctantly accepted the marriage. I was left speechless by her audacity. How could she label a woman who can't have children a failure and shame her in front of everyone? In the middle of the wedding reception, the mother-in-law, standing on the stage to deliver her speech, blurted out something shocking. The wedding hall fell silent at the unexpected insult from the mother-in-law. My name is Catherine. I'm a 31-year-old office worker at a well-known company. I belong to the glamorous department of product development, where I'm responsible for planning new products. I've been involved in several hit products so far, and I find my job very fulfilling. Though I'm content with my work and happy, I have a secret I can't tell anyone. That is, I'm infertile. I found out 5 years ago that I can't have children. I remember feeling shocked and devastated at the time. I felt worthless, and I lost hope for the future. In fact, the boyfriend I was dating at the time ended up breaking up with me. Being overwhelmed by sadness and frustration, the only thing that could uplift me was my job. I worked hard so I wouldn't have time to dwell on unnecessary thoughts. Looking back, I think I was avoiding reality. But thanks to my hard work, a product I was deeply involved in became a big hit, and my evaluation at work improved. Since I couldn't have children, I thought I had no choice but to give up on marriage. I was convinced that contributing to society through work was the only path I had in life. But then, an unexpected encounter came my way. At a meeting for product development, I met a man my age from a client company. This man changed my fate. His name is David. He's the son of the president of the client company, and he's the head of the planning department. David and I exchanged contact information right away. Initially, we only communicated for work, but gradually our private exchanges increased. Eventually, we started dating, and it turned into a relationship. I thought I could never fall in love again, so meeting him felt like a miracle. David is a very kind and devoted man. And to such a man, I couldn't bring myself to reveal my secret. If David found out that I was infertile, he would surely leave me. I was scared at the thought. But I couldn't keep secrets from David, who treated me with sincerity. I didn't know what would happen, but I decided to be honest about my body. I made up my mind and told David that I was infertile. He'll leave me. I thought it was possible. Despite being resolved, I was anxious. But when I gathered the courage to talk, he started to cry after hearing it. He comforted me saying, "It must have been tough. Thank you for telling me." His kindness made me cry, and I remember it like it was yesterday. In the end, the breakup I feared did not come, and my relationship with David continued smoothly from that day. On our second anniversary, David celebrated at a restaurant. He opened a small case in front of me, revealing a ring, and then he spoke. "Catherine, I want you to marry me." It was an unexpected proposal. My heart pounded with joy. But I also felt a wave of anxiety. "David, are you sure about me? I can't have a baby. We can't have our own child. Are you still okay with that?" Even though David understands my situation, the weight of marriage is something different. I couldn't immediately say yes to his proposal. "Yeah, it doesn't matter. I want to spend the rest of my life with you, Catherine. Even when things get tough, even when we're sad, I want us to live through it all together." David reassured me, taking my anxiety into account. At that moment, I might have shed a lifetime's worth of tears. Since the day I was diagnosed as infertile, I had never dreamt that this day would come. I knew then that I could face anything as long as I was with him. I accepted his proposal, certain of my feelings. "I want to live my life with you too, David. Thank you for always caring for me. I look forward to our future together." And so, we quickly began preparations for our wedding. I was already past 30. I was eager to become a wife, to officially join our lives together as soon as possible. It's funny how much you want to rush things once a proposal is on the table. Now that marriage was becoming a reality, I felt it all the more. But before anything else, we had to meet David's parents. We had met them a few times before, but we hadn't really had a proper conversation. We set a date to meet and tell them about our engagement. But the news of our marriage did not go smoothly. While his father was very happy, his mother kept a stern face throughout. And then, "Catherine, I can't accept that you're going to marry David." She expressed her opposition to our marriage. "Why?" Before I could speak, David questioned his mother. As she continued to glare at me, she explained her reason. "You can't have children, right? That means we won't have any grandchildren, doesn't it? Our only son David can't have a child. Is there anything worse?" She brought up the very thing I didn't want to be confronted with. I was prepared to face blame for being infertile, but hearing it said outright really hurt. Her words left me without a reply. "You understand, right? David is set to become the next president of the company. It's only natural that we expect his wife to produce an heir. Marrying someone who can't do that, I won't allow it." She continued to deny our marriage in a forceful tone. I was fully aware that David was the future head of the company, and I understood that his parents would want him to have a child soon. But David proposed to me, knowing all this. Not being able to have a child with David is painful for me too. Even though we chose to get married knowing all of this, her words were too harsh. "I'm the one who said it didn't matter." David jumped in, defending me against his mother. "Stop blaming Catherine. Don't trample over our decisions like this." David spoke up for me when I was lost for words. His dad was also angry at his mom, saying, "How can you say such a thing?" But no matter what anyone said, his mother remained unmoved, her expression unchanged. "I'm not saying anything wrong," she declared, before leaving the table, indicating she had no more to discuss. In the end, our conversation that day didn't lead to any resolution. Still, it didn't change our firm decision to get married. We took the plunge and registered our marriage, with his father's approval. We knew if we waited for her approval, we might never get married. "It doesn't matter if my mom is against it," David reassured me. "I'm the one who wanted to get married. Let's just wait for her to eventually give in." And so, David and I became husband and wife. Yet, even after that, his mother refused to acknowledge our marriage. "I will never accept this. I won't even attend the wedding," she said, pushing it even further. Because of this, we decided to put off the wedding ceremony. We still hoped to have her acceptance before we celebrated our union. Day after day, his father tried to persuade her, and both David and I continued to appeal to her, pouring our hearts into every plea. But she remained stubborn and refused to give in. Eventually, even my parents visited his parents' house several times to try and talk her down. Even some of David's relatives suggested she accept our marriage. Finally, after all these earnest appeals from everyone around her, she relented. At last, we could proceed with the wedding ceremony. She still seemed discontented, but David and I began our preparations, and finally set a date for our wedding. It was a year from the day we registered our marriage, essentially, our first wedding anniversary. When our wedding day was finally set, David and I felt relieved. And before we knew it, the day of our wedding arrived. I was deeply touched, filled with joy that we were finally celebrating this day. I was finally able to wear the wedding dress that I had almost given up on. It felt like a dream come true. The wedding ceremony went smoothly at the church, and the reception began. Surrounded by the blessings of many attendees, I was overflowing with happiness. I owe it all to David, who stood by my side and led me here, even when I was feeling defeated and thought I wasn't worthy of marriage. I couldn't thank him enough. Seeing David, all dressed up and looking so gallant and dependable, made me so happy. As the reception proceeded and we were about to retreat for a costume change, I noticed his mother taking the stage. It looked like she had asked the MC for permission to say a few words to the attendees. And so, she started her speech on her own. "Thank you all for coming to celebrate my son's wedding today. The truth is, the bride can't have children, and I've been against their marriage all along." I was about to leave my seat to change, but her words made me freeze on the spot. She had just mentioned something that shouldn't be said, especially not here at our joyful wedding celebration. The lively atmosphere in the venue quickly hushed to a silence. "But my son was insistent, so I gave in and accepted their marriage." In the dead silent hall, mother-in-law's voice was the only one echoing. Frozen in place, I watched as David tried to approach mother-in-law and snatch the microphone. "Mom, can you stop this?" But David's attempts were smoothly evaded by mother-in-law, who wouldn't be stopped. Holding onto the microphone tightly so as not to lose it, she continued to address the attendees. "You see, I will never be able to hold a grandchild in my life. Can you believe such a dreadful story? Really, I don't understand why he chose a woman like this." I was flabbergasted by the barrage of harsh words. Beside me, David was struggling to contain his anger towards his mother's unhinged outburst. Then, mother-in-law dropped the bombshell. "Well, as you can see, my daughter-in-law is a barren failure. But she's quite the career woman and makes good money. So, I begrudgingly accepted their marriage." Mother-in-law chuckled loudly at her own words. She then looked at me and added one final jab. "You should be grateful. It's thanks to me that you're having this day." With that, mother-in-law, appearing pleased, returned to her seat, having finished her utterly disgraceful speech. Had there ever been a more offensive speech? I was too stunned to even hear the voices around me. Urged by David and the venue staff, I was led out of the hall with my mind a blur. Once inside the dressing room, all the suppressed emotions came crashing in. Anger, sadness, the sense of loss from having our anticipated ceremony ruined. I was overwhelmed by my distaste for everything. I never wanted to see mother-in-law's face again. I didn't want to return to a venue where such a person was present. As I was changing out of my current dress for the next one, I refused to put on the next dress and changed into my own clothes instead. "I've had enough. I'm going home," I told David and ran out of the dressing room, towards the entrance of the venue. "Catherine, wait a minute!" Ignoring David's attempts to stop me, I jumped into a taxi that was parked at the entrance. I asked the driver to take me home. Having been humiliated by mother-in-law in front of everyone at the reception, I couldn't contain my anger. I wanted to escape from there as quickly as possible. Our new home, where David and I had just started living, was a short 5-minute drive from the wedding venue. Upon entering our home, the tears I had been holding back flowed freely. I never dreamed that I would be treated so cruelly in front of a crowd on my wedding day. My happiness from yesterday had instantly turned into the worst despair. It's not like I chose to be infertile. And to expose that in front of so many people. Especially on a day like this. Thoughts were racing through my head. While I was wiping away my tears, David arrived. "Catherine, I'm truly sorry. Please, forgive me. I never imagined my mother would say such horrible things. I'm sorry, I couldn't do anything for you." David bowed deeply to me, offering words of apology. He explained that as the groom, he couldn't afford to raise his voice against his mother's antics. I knew very well that David was a decent person. And besides, mother-in-law was the one at fault here. I didn't feel like blaming him at all. "Please, Catherine, let's go back to the wedding. I told my dad to keep my mom out of the venue. They're in the middle of a dress change and it's a mingling time for the guests. We can still make it back in time. I don't want our reception to end in shambles like this. Please, let's go back together." I nodded at David's plea. I decided to trust him and return to the wedding. I didn't want to cause any more pain for him, my supporter and my understanding companion. Moreover, I was reluctant to ruin the reception we had both painstakingly prepared for. Apologizing to David for rushing back home in a huff, we made our way back to the venue. In the taxi, we held hands, promising to see our wedding reception through to the end. Once we returned and entered the family waiting room, we found my mother-in-law surrounded by relatives. It was clear from her exhausted expression that she had been heavily reprimanded. Seeing my face, mother-in-law approached me. "Oh, Catherine, I'm so sorry. Can we just pretend that earlier incident never happened?" She lowered her head slightly towards me, pleading for forgiveness in a childish voice. It was a complete turnaround from the smug face she had displayed at the reception. "What? How could you even suggest that, after the humiliation you caused in front of so many people? How can you say let's just forget it all happened?" My anger resurfaced at mother-in-law's insolent behavior. The audacity of asking for forgiveness after what she had done was beyond my comprehension. Why was she seeking forgiveness in the first place when she didn't even want to accept me? She could have just left things as they were if she disliked it so much. I expressed my unwillingness to forgive her to mother-in-law and started preparing to get back to the ceremony. "Don't be like that. I'm apologizing, so won't you forgive me? I had no idea that one of your relatives was a key client of our company. My maternal uncle, as it turns out, runs a significant client of my father-in-law's company. Apparently, while I was away, he had given mother-in-law a serious dressing down. He had even hinted at stopping the business transaction. Thanks to my father-in-law's desperate apologies, the situation was barely kept under control. I immediately understood why mother-in-law was apologizing. It wasn't out of guilt or regret towards me, but for her own self-preservation. I was so astounded that I was lost for words. It was then that David, who had been silently watching our exchange, finally spoke up. "Mom, is that your idea of an apology? Aren't you disrespecting Catherine too much? And you're apologizing to her just because you were scolded by a client?" Mother-in-law looked blankly at David, who had raised his voice suddenly. It was rare for him to lose his temper like this, as he was typically calm and collected. It was understandable that mother-in-law was taken aback.
Do you even understand how much you hurt Catherine, Mom? You made light of her most sensitive issue in front of everyone at our wedding. As a person, that's the worst thing you could do. No matter the reason, it's unforgivable to casually bring up someone's health issues like that.
David didn't hold back, continuing to shout at mother-in-law. He let out all the pent-up feelings he had towards his own mother. He had witnessed firsthand how mother-in-law had hurt me time and time again, using my infertility as a weapon. The worst of it all was her outrageous behavior at today's reception. David's gaze upon his mother was filled with disdain.
I'm done with you. Consider yourself without a son. If you can't accept Catherine as my wife, that's your problem. What you say doesn't affect us. Our mother-in-law doesn't concern outsiders.
A complete disavowal. David finally laid it out for his mother-in-law. He declared he had no intention of associating with her from here on out. As far as he was concerned, he had no mother. That's what I told mother-in-law.
David, don't say things like that. I really want to celebrate you. Don't be angry, okay? I won't say anything more. Let's lift the mood and enjoy the wedding, shall we?
His mother-in-law turned a sickly pale at David's words. In a fluster, she tried to gauge his mood. However, there was nothing she could say now that would make David listen.
Today's not only about me, it's about Catherine, too. We're a team, we're one. Looking down on Catherine is just like looking down on me. I get it, you don't want to celebrate us. So just leave now. Get out.
Her apologies were nothing more than self-preservation. There was no sincerity towards me. David told her mercilessly to get out. He told her that I was his only family.
I can't believe this, David.
Upon hearing David's words, his mother stood there, dumbfounded. It seemed she hadn't expected such clear repulsion from her son. A cold gaze was cast upon her by David, me, David's father, and the rest of the relatives. Having lost all allies and standing alone, she finally accepted the reality. Her only option was to leave the scene. After she had gone, I quickly changed my dress, took David's hand, and we returned to the venue hand in hand. Guests, who were oblivious to the turmoil that had occurred. Although we had kept them waiting for a considerable length of time, they welcomed us back with a round of applause. It seems everyone had sensed the situation and kindly waited for us. I was truly grateful for this warm atmosphere. And the wedding reception, now devoid of my mother-in-law, proceeded smoothly, with David and I preparing to give our final speech. We made sure to apologize sincerely for the disruption caused by my mother-in-law. And so, we managed to conclude our reception without further ado. Following this, true to David's declaration, we decided to completely distance ourselves from my mother-in-law. David changed his contact information, making sure no communication came through from her. He even proposed that we move homes, even though we just settled into our new one. Realizing David's firm intent to sever all ties with mother-in-law, I agreed to the move. The moving expenses were covered by my father-in-law, citing the troubles caused by my mother-in-law, and we promptly relocated to our new home. After ensuring our move was complete, father-in-law took the opportunity to serve mother-in-law with divorce papers. Father-in-law, too, had long harbored resentment toward mother-in-law's behavior towards me, and the incident at the wedding was the final straw. While a sincere apology ensured that our uncle, who was also a business associate, did not sever ties with us, he was completely fed up with mother-in-law. Mother-in-law was expelled from her family home, forced to embark on a lonely new life. Since David and I have no involvement, we have no idea about mother-in-law's whereabouts or her current state. Rumors suggest that due to the disgraceful display at the wedding, no family members are willing to aid her, and she is living a lonely, harsh life. Apparently, she's residing in a budget apartment, barely making ends meet by working part-time jobs from morning till night. On the other hand, David and I are enjoying a harmonious married life. We have no children. But even without the blessing of children, we can live together for the rest of our lives. As long as we continue to respect and grow with each other every day, we can always be happy. David and I believe this, as we join hands and face our future together. Our hopes spread toward the future we are building together.